the CentreSteer podcast, a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners.
Welcome to the CentreSteer podcast number 139 for October of 2024. CentreSteer is a monthly podcast for Land Rover enthusiasts, hobbyists, and owners around the world. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and thanks for listening. This month, it's Love Luck. We talked to the one and only Mark Love. I met Mark at my very first Fort Pitt Land Rover group gathering in 2003. Mark is a lifelong automotive fan and multi-decade Land Rover fanatic. I've been looking forward to having Mark on for years to share his stories. And as you probably know by now, the idea for this podcast was from sitting around the campfire at Mar, telling our stories, our off-road stories, our stories of what we did on the trail. And Mark has always been there telling his stories. His lucky stories. So stay tuned for that.
About half of those stories might be true.
That's Harold, and I'm John Costage. And joining us are also Dixon and Morgan. Welcome, everybody.
Good to be here.
And thanks to our Patreon and Buy Me a Tea subscribers for their support. Patreon supporters receive bonus content, including 10 questions, which is our Land Rover-oriented question and answer lightning round. We did one for Mark, and that'll be posted here towards the middle of the month. I'll give a Garfield report after the club events calendar with Dixon. Dixon, it's time for the North American events calendar.
Actually, it's getting pretty thin as the temperatures are dropping. I've actually only know of 3 that are coming up, and they're coming up. So if you're listening to this and downloading it right on the 1st, you better get your motor shined and running. The first one is a Land Rover Parts Shop and Shine weekend type event in Nebo, North Carolina, being put on by the Carolina Trail Rovers. It's basically a show, swap meet, and such, camping overnight, and some driving about and the rest of it at the Southern Overland Company. It's a co-sponsor of the event and so on. But go to their Carolina Trail Rovers website or Facebook group and get some information on that one. The other one, the weekend after, is Rover Rendezvous 24 on the Stagecoach Trails in Julian, California. This one's put on by the Southern California Rover Club. They're going to be doing a weekend of friends, trails, campfire stories, fun, and the rest of it. A registration is required, and you can get at that through their Southern California Rover Club website or through their Facebook group. And a third one, which is actually starting on the 1st, is probably the 20-something Guy Fawkes rally in upstate New York. Though that one is actually rather limited because of the size of the venue and so on. And that's about it for events for this year. Anarch has just finished one off down south and is actually planning on a couple of events for next year, but it's getting a little bit early to describe exactly where they are. But they are planning a third one, which is aimed at improving your abilities on the trails. Maybe you know a little bit more about that one, John.
Yeah, the current thinking for Anarch in 2025, which I can't believe it's going to be 2025 soon, is there was a lot of work to do 3 events this year. So we're going to try to cut it back to 2 events. That's the current thought. One generally in the west of North America and one generally in the east of North America. And that's pretty much all I right now know that is concrete for that. There's also going to be a training event on off-road skills that will take place at the Safe Extract location in New Mexico and probably in the spring. That's my current understanding of what's going to happen there. And the idea there is to take their intensive course on off-road skills and recovery, and then take that back to your clubs so that they can learn off-road techniques and recovery. And there'll be more, I'm sure, coming out about that soon. Keep abreast of anarch.club. And of course, we'll mention it here on the podcast when details are available.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic year for Anarch events that Bruce Fowler and Bob Steele have organized and run. A lot of credit goes out to them to get those events going on. But for next year, Surely there must be something going on with the Vintage Grand Prix, John.
There is. Thank you for that transition. Because thankfully, the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix has already announced their 2025 dates. And so we're now inviting you. We've talked about the Vintage Grand Prix for a number of years.
And it's back in mid-July where it belongs.
Exactly correct, Harold. That's the good news. It's going to the Shenley Park Race Weekend, which is when the International Auto Show takes place, including the British cars. And you have heard us talk about when all these Jaguars in particular come out, hundreds of them, MGs and Triumphs, and of course the good Land Rover contingent, will take place Saturday, July 19th, 2025 in Pittsburgh, in basically downtown Pittsburgh and near Oakland section of Pittsburgh, near where University.
On the golf course.
And it takes place in the golf course. And part of that, and this is going to be interesting, because part of the race takes place on the Panther Hollow Bridge. Panther being part of the University of Pittsburgh mascot is the Panther. And the Panther Hollow Bridge was just closed by the city of Pittsburgh because it was deemed structurally deficient. They've got, 9 months? I don't know if it'll get repaired in time. Hopefully it will be. And to be clear, this is not the bridge that collapsed last year.
This is another one that will collapse.
To be preemptive.
Exactly. Actually, to the city's credit, they actually increased the number of bridge inspectors and inspections, because this is a city bridge, not a county bridge.
Yeah.
And so they did an extra inspection because the Fern Hollow Bridge is the one that collapsed and was replaced within a year. And the Panther Hollow Bridge, they did an inspection, and they didn't say to the degree what it is. I don't know if it's concrete is chipped off, or I don't think it's as bad as what the Fern Hollow Bridge was, which was like basically metal that was as thick as my arm. It was not able to hold anything up.
And it's not as bad as that bridge across the parkway that for decades they had another bridge underneath to catch all the debris falling off the bridge.
Yes, that was the Greenfield Bridge, which has since been replaced. But yes, Harold, you are correct. That had a catch bridge.
So they're trying something new with this bridge. They're closing it before it collapses.
Exactly.
But that could impact the race course.
Correct. But should not impact all the other events except for the racing.
So for those of you, if any of you are listening who participate in the vintage race on the streets, if you have that route memorized, you may be in for a surprise, because it may not be the same this year.
And if you have been thinking about coming to the Vintage Grand Prix, start making your plans. Now that we know the date, you have 7 months to get ready for that.
Then since it's now back in mid-July where it belongs, it won't be conflicting with the big picnic of the Minnesota Land Rovers in August. Last year was on the same weekend as the Grand Prix, so I had to make a choice.
And a bit of errata, we made a mistake. This is the first time ever on the podcast.
Yes, because we never make any mistakes.
We've never made a mistake. We made one last month. We got called out on it. The Vermont Weenie Roast takes place in Vermont, not New Jersey. Apparently,
when did we say it takes place in New Jersey?
Yeah, who said that? It wasn't me.
I don't remember because I didn't go back and listen, but I did get a message.
I might have said that ironically, but yeah, I certainly didn't say it in any kind of seriousness.
Yeah. If that's the case, Harold, then we're keeping to our no errors ever made on the podcast tradition.
None that we'll admit to.
I think we did a good job covering ourselves for that one.
As Dixon mentioned, we had the 3 ANARC events throughout the year. The last one was the Gulf Area Rover Romp, and that was this past weekend from the time that we're recording and from the first of the month here in November. And I was able to attend. I traveled 1,000 miles each way. I drove 2,000 miles in 4 days.
Not in the 109, I'm assuming.
Not in the 109, not in the 110, nor in the LR3. I wanted to take the LR3 just because of the distance and being able to get there in a timely fashion. And the LR3 needed an oil change, so I was taking it down the week before to the local garage to get the oil changed. And it started making this horrible grinding noise from the rear.
Ooh.
And he took a look at it and said, yeah, it's the electronic parking brake. The backing plate had rusted through just on the passenger side, pulled it through, and then it just ground against the shoe and was just grinding. So that whole assembly needed to be replaced, order the part. They came in time, but he was not able to get it fixed for me to take the trip. So I ended up taking the Jetta, and I got 41.2 miles per gallon. It's very exciting.
And here I was hoping you bought one of those last NAS Freelanders and have traveled back and forth in that to just surprise us.
Almost, or not really. Joe Hesselman of the Lost Cause Ranch showed up, not in the Freelander. He said it was functional, but he didn't think that it was going to handle. I think he also drove like 1,000 miles to get there, so he was not.
Yeah, it would be close to 1,000 miles from where he lives. So did he bring the free LR4?
No, he and his brother Ted, they drove down in and towed their Bug-Eye Series 2. I think it's 66, if I remember correctly, the year. And they towed that down and then drove the Bug-Eye around.
Pretty sure Bug-Eye is only a 69.
It depends on when they were actually registered, because they came over, and if they sat on the lot, it could be several different years. But yeah, it is like 68 thereabouts.
I seem to recall he said it was a 2A, and I was like, but it's a Bug-Eye, and I thought,
yeah,
okay, so 2As can be Bug-Eyes also?
2As are only Bug-Eyes, but not all 2As are Bug-Eyed. It was the transition when they first moved the headlights from the middle to the wings, but they hadn't done the whole recessing them into the front yet, which became the Series 3/Defender look.
Yeah, so, if you see one, if the late 2A is going to have the metal galvanized grille, and you have to look at the windscreen to see how it's mounted, whether it's on the brackets are on the side or on the front of the bulkhead. There's a couple things to tell them apart. The Series 3 and the late 2A are rather similar. They really show if you look inside. One's padded dash, the other's your traditional Series 2A dash. But from the outside, quickly glancing at it, you can be confused between the two of them with the native type vehicles.
They obviously know, and I'll have to maybe get some clarity from them. I seem to recall he said it was a 66, but again, could be completely wrong.
Yeah.
You can swap parts all around too, so it's possible to make a 66 Series 3 if you throw the right or wrong parts at it, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
All I know is that this is 2 years of Anarch events, and we have not seen an NAS Freelander yet. But we have seen 80 inches. Just saying.
Plenty of them. Almost an infestation of 80 inches.
Continuing with my Garfield report, not only did I meet Joe and Ted from the Lost Cause Ranch, Ted is Joe's brother, and they look at like first glance, they do look alike. It was a little weird at times. But the first night I got there on Friday, we ended up doing a night run over at the off-road park, which was pretty cool. The ground was very dry. It's generally flat there, as you might imagine, getting close to the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. And it was very dry. It was warm. During the day, it got up to almost 90 degrees. And, yeah. And then at night, the first night, it got down pretty chilly. I want to say in the upper 40s. But it was warm. It was warm. Thankfully, it wasn't humid, but it was definitely warm. And the night ride was fun. We had about 15 trucks go on the night run, and it was one way in, one way out, but we were by ourselves, and it took a little, as you'd expect, took a little longer than anticipated. But I think still good time.
They always do.
They always do, yes. No one got stuck. There was no real problems. It was pretty much an easy trail to go on. There's a couple of technical parts where you had to watch yourself, and there were some gullies that if you slipped in, you could slip in and put your truck on the side, but there was still ample room to get through. And it goes under the highway. I don't think it's I-10. I think it's the side road, but it goes under it. There's like a small tunnel that you go under to get through it. And there's a very little bit of a water crossing. The water was very low, and we went through that. But yeah, that was good. It was a good time. There was several new Defenders. There were I think there was one classic Defender. There was a lightweight. There was a D5. There was one D2, which I have to make mention. The D2 was driven by the owner's daughter, and she is phenomenal driving off-road. She's a new driver, and she just did a great job.
Good for her.
Yeah, absolutely. She seemed very excited. And of course, it's one of the situations where Dad would never praise her. So others were, because she was doing a really good job. So we had the night run. And then the next day was all of the RTV and Anarch Cup activities, competition. The RTV was out in the field and of where it was very dusty. There were 5 stages to the course, and it was a little bit challenging here and there, and it was super, super hot. And thankfully,
You drive the RTV?
I did get to drive the RTV thanks to Joe. Joe not only lent me a hat so that I didn't get completely sunburnt, but they let me drive their bug-eye on the trail. And actually, I came in first on the RTV.
Cool. You have some Rovers North money.
I now have some Rovers North money. Yes. Thanks
Good
to
for
Joe.
you.
And guess what came in? Oh, and guess what truck came in first? Joe in the bug-eye.
Nice.
And it's his brother's truck. So it's Ted's truck. And both I and Joe drove it. And
And to underscore that, the winner of the RTV event at the North Star in Minnesota was a 109 that was barely running. Those of you that think you need a big, powerful truck to do these things, you don't. You want to be going slow and just crawling through there. And the series truck is just fine. It doesn't even have to be running right, apparently.
this one was running pretty good. It was running pretty well on this time. And we did put it into first and left it there. At least during all the course part, I didn't
As
even
you
shift.
should.
Yeah, didn't even shift into second, and just left it in first in low range. And
if you need second, you're going too fast.
yes, just let it go because as part of the RTV, many people don't know this, or as I don't think they don't know this. You're not supposed to stop once you go. There are 12 gates, descending numbers, so you start with 12, and the moment you touch a gate with any part of your vehicle, could be the mirror, could be your hand, whatever it is, tire, fender flare. When you touch that gate, that's the number of points you get for that section of the course.
Or if you stop before that gate, that's the number of points you get for that stage. And the object is to not get points.
Correct. The lower the score, the better. And if you're a long wheelbase vehicle, basically most of the modern things, you get 1 shunt, which is the ability to stop and reposition, but you have to announce shunt before you do that.
It's essentially a mulligan.
Yes, there was the RTV. I probably had about 20 trucks go through. I think that seemed to be the number. And thanks to Rovers North and Jeff Aronson and Scott Preston for helping to make that all happen.
Helps to make it evil.
They had a little help.
Jeff is very devious in how he plans those things, I gotta say.
Well, he had a little help this time. There might have been a couple other people helping out to make a couple 90-degree bends that everybody complained about. And suck it up. You're not supposed to get through this completely without any points. That would defeat the purpose.
That is the object, is
Yes.
to not have people finish
Yes.
and have it successfully get harder and harder as you go.
And then there was a stage 6, but that was for the Anarch Cup, and it was at a different field. They had set up another course, and that was for the Anarch Cup competition. There were 5 teams that competed for that, and they went through that course. And then that was followed by the physical challenge, and the physical challenge was managed by Ralph Sarek of Sarek Motor Works. And this was a trailer pickup, drive, and then back it up into position again without hitting any cones or getting any penalties.
And from what I understand, you had to get that trailer in exactly the same spot because the trailer jack had to land on this block of wood that was not allowed to move.
Absolutely correct. Exactly, Harold. You are absolutely correct. And
Which is devious.
And that is exactly what happened. And there was a hitch that with the correct ball size on it, and it was on the trailer. So if you didn't have the right one, then you could use your own, or you could use that one. But if you had that one, that hitch still had to go back on the trailer box, and you also had to put the chalk box back for the trailer. Otherwise, time would continue to run. It was, as you said, quite devious. So you'd hook it up, and then your co-pilot passenger was outside the vehicle. They couldn't leave the area where the trailer was. Once it was hooked up, they had to stay there, and then they would do the connection and disconnection. And then the driver would pick up the vehicle, drive around the course, come back in the middle, drive up the middle, which was about maybe 60 feet, something like that. And then back straight up into where the trailer started. And again, not hitting any of those cones, otherwise it'd be a penalty. And then the co-pilot would help to disconnect the trailer, put it back and make sure it was in position. And if you moved the vehicle, so if you backed up and didn't line it up correctly the first time, and then you wanted to pull up and then back up again to a line to get over that block, that was a penalty. So you had to minimize the number of times you did that. You had to have good communication. And then the team order was important because as every team did it, then the next team learned to do something better.
Yeah. You want to do that event last.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, that always seems to be the case.
Yeah, the last team ended up using walkie-talkies to talk to each other. So that was helpful. Yeah. And then also the winning team, which was New Mexico, Craig and Doug. This one was smart. They turned to Ted and said, "Hey, Ted, can you help us out?" When they started, they took the locking pin off the hitch, and then Ted went to the back. I asked him to go in the back and then step on the trailer. So he pivoted up and balanced it instead of jacking it up, pulled the truck back, dropped down the trailer, hooked it back up and took off. And everyone's, "Oh, you can't do that." And you're like, "Man, Ralph, you didn't ask me if it was allowed to have someone help you to balance the trailer or not." And that was apparently not forbidden. So did the little fulcrum pivot business, and off they went, and they did the same thing on the return flight. So they didn't have to.
The things that it doesn't say you can't do are as important as the things that it does say you can't do. That's rules 101.
Yeah, your tip here is ask questions beforehand. And, and that was Ralph's. "You didn't ask me." But when someone did ask, he would say, "Yes, you can do this," or "No, you can't do that." So that was the Anarch Cup. Yep. And the overall winner of the Anarch Cup for all three competitions ended up being New Mexico.
So Doug competes for the New Mexico club, and his son Trey competes for Rove. And so there's been a lot of trash talk in the shop all year long. This ought to be interesting now.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I'm curious what vehicle the winners of the Anarch Cup were driving. How many of the new defenders competed in that with their fancy reversing modes?
There was one new defender, and that was Bob Steele and Bruce Fowler. And they didn't do so well.
Because Bob doesn't like the Legacy Defender. It would be selling out for him to drive that in the competition. My question is, how big was the trailer?
Oh, it was 10 foot. It was a dually trailer.
Tandem axle?
Okay. Tandem axle, yes.
All right, yeah. Those are easier to back up. The evil thing to do would be give them one of those little 6-foot shorties.
Make them do it with a Sankey.
Oh, that would suck.
Yes,
right.
And finally, on Sunday on the way out, ended up having breakfast with Ted and Joe, Lost Cause Ranch again. And we ended up going to a local place for breakfast. Turns out this was the one time that place was closed because they were on vacation. So we're like, "Oh, is there another place to go?" "Yeah, there's one. It's 0.2 miles away." We ended up walking there, which wasn't too bad. But it's 9 a.m. and it's already stinking hot. It's 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But we walked there, and that's when I learned, which we hadn't learned before, Joe runs 100-mile races. Oh, so he's one of those guys. He's a 100-miler runner.
Upon his feet.
Upon his feet.
No wonder he always seems to have so much energy.
So did you make him run ahead, check the menu, come back, keep running back and forth, answering questions about the menu before you all got there?
Probably should have, but we had a nice, at least we walked through the neighborhood, so it wasn't too bad. But yes, that's
very nice.
We had a good talk and conversation on the way there and back. And then they departed to head up back to Iowa, and I departed and ended up staying in Virginia for the night. And my little fun trivia from that is I left the Mobile, Alabama area, and it was about 88 degrees. And like 10 hours later, I get to Virginia, and it's 42 degrees. That was fun.
Reduced by half.
Exactly. All in about 10 hours. There you go. There's your field report for the GAR, Gulf Area Rover Romp.
And did they give you any GAR badge?
There was a GAR badge. There was a badge. There was a cup. There was a shirt. The whole bit. Yes, got all that. And
in a GAR badge bag?
No.
Right.
Just a cup.
At least they did the GAR badge. It's too good an opportunity to pass up.
And a big thanks to Charles Bell of the Gulf Area Rover Club for making this happen and executing it. It was a good time. Everybody there had a good time. It was nice event, if a little too hot for my tastes, but it was a good event.
Just imagine if he'd held it in June.
He is thinking about doing this again, and I don't know that for next year and hopefully he doesn't mind me mentioning this yet, the idea of maybe having something like unofficial just in the spring, and then for 2026 plan it again in the spring, but a proper event. So like a soft launch kind of thing, because it looks like October, just too many things going on throughout North America with Land Rover activities. It's a good month for that.
But given how warm it was, he could afford to do it in November even and have some event happening in November, which there aren't that many, as Dixon pointed out.
Related to the November events again, it must be the weekend, the way the weekends fall, that the Guy Fawkes Day event is on the 1st instead of the 5th this year. Is that correct? That's correct. It's because Guy Fawkes is Tuesday and this is the closer weekend. Cool. And then up here, at least in Canada, you start running into Remembrance Day or Memorial Day or Veterans Day down in the States.
Veterans Day. All right. That is the Garfield Report and the club calendar for this month. And now it's time for the news. First up, JLR reports stable Q2 retail sales, and retail sales of 103,000 units in the second quarter, which included their Chery China joint venture, were down 3% compared to the same quarter last year. Retail sales volume for the first 6 months of the financial year was up 3%. Compared to the prior year, retail sales were up 29% in the UK, up 9% in North America, down 22% in Europe, down 17% in China, and down 6% everywhere else. JLR production in the quarter was restricted to about 86,000 units, down 7% compared to the same quarter, as a result of supply disruptions from a key high-grade aluminium supplier that affected multiple OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. So that looks to be why their sales were down, was because of this supply of their aluminum.
I suspect if they were willing to use aluminum, they'd be okay. It's that they insist on aluminium that's making the supply so difficult.
Yeah, somebody has to go out to the warehouse and scratch an extra eye in all of those sheets and rolls.
Yeah, that takes work.
Yeah, they should have stuck with Burma Bright. Yep. I like that they left the supplier unnamed so that they don't get any retribution and even less supply of aluminum.
And next up, JLR embraces automation with Boston Dynamics robot dog for plant inspections. JLR has made an intriguing addition to the Coventry production facility with an innovative robot dog named, guess what? Guess what they named a robot dog? Spot. You're wrong.
Jerry.
You're right. Jerry. It's named, good one. It's Rover, which was developed by Boston Dynamics, a subsidiary of Hyundai Motor Corporation. I didn't know that Boston Dynamics was a subsidiary of Hyundai.
No wonder if Boston Dynamics had to appeal to JLR to be able to use the word Rover in that name.
Oh,
I wonder if JLR had to appeal to JLR to allow Hyundai to.
I believe Jaguar
use
Land
it.
Rover had appealed to JLR.
Yes.
The Rover has been hired, quote unquote, to assist with plant inspections, focusing on optional checks and monitoring wear and tear. Specifically, what can it do? Error reduction by utilizing robotics for inspections. The risk of human error is minimized. Data collection. Rover captures vital data during inspections, enabling engineers to plan maintenance and repairs effectively. Gas leak detection. Equipped with sensors, Rover can identify gas leaks that might go unnoticed by humans. And finally, thermal sensors. The robot dog incorporates thermal sensors to enhance battery management, contributing JLR's commitment to electric vehicle technology. And later on, they say that they're eventually going to roll this out to all their plants.
Now, is this robot dog housebroken, or does it leave little oil spots all over the factory?
I believe
They're used to those.
it's battery only. It is battery only. And it goes back to its doghouse for charging.
They decided to use a Rover because it has a better range of sensors. Sorry, I'm trying to horribly stretch this to
we're gonna move
Range
on.
Rover or something.
Because it can get anywhere into the plant? I don't know.
All right, next up is Liberty Mutual partners with Jaguar Land Rover to offer premium auto insurance to U.S. customers. Liberty Mutual, leading global insurer, has formed an exclusive partnership with JLR North America. I don't know if it's Jaguar Land Rover North America or JLR North America. I don't know. It just says whatever. We'll just go with whatever they have. To provide tailored auto insurance solutions for JLR vehicle owners in the U.S. during the car buying process. The collaboration aims to streamline the insurance experience for JLR customers by integrating auto insurance offerings into the vehicle purchasing journey. I don't think I've heard of that before here in North America. Typically, when you go to buy a car from the dealer, you use whatever your existing insurance is, and they don't try to change it, at least not that I recall.
But a lot, if they're a first-time buyer, they don't have insurance to roll in there. But it reminds me of when you buy a house, a lot of times your homeowner's insurance gets built into the mortgage.
That's very
So this could be like that, but I think it's also an opportunity for the owners to pay too much for their insurance because they're not paying attention to what it costs because it's built in.
Or possibly are there issues in the United States with theft, and JLR is partnering because of some insurance companies might not want to touch their products, similar to the situation in the UK where they're getting stolen all the time.
In this country, it's more the Hyundais that are having that problem. But
Lexus, Toyotas, and so on. There's such, you can get into them in under 2 minutes, apparently. You can get into a lot of them in under 2. It's just that the Hyundais, you don't even have to bother, and they refuse to improve it.
There's also the number of them, too. It's easier to find, typically Hyundais, and if you're going to go take a Land Rover or a Range Rover, you got to go to where they are.
Or you could just drive a series truck and you can leave it unlocked with the keys in the ignition and no one's going to steal it.
Oh, yeah. They wouldn't know what to do. Well,
that is so true.
Will JLR North America help provide insurance for that? Now, that would be potentially helpful.
That would be nice, but that goes against their goal of selling you a new one.
Right. I imagine that Land Rover also has quite the online shopping system for buying Land Rovers, and it's probably a good integration there as well, especially since they love their packages, that you could have insurance packages as well as vehicle packages.
But I don't think you can do that here in the U.S. because you have to go through the dealer system, and I don't think you can pre-package insurance through that. I hear what you're saying, but I think the way you buy cars here, it's very difficult to buy them direct from the manufacturer. And I think if they were doing that direct from the manufacturer, they could potentially, that would make some sense. But if you're going through the dealer, because the dealer has got to get its cut, I think it's going to be more of an upsell for the dealer. Maybe that's why they're doing it, to give something for the dealers to get an additional cut because they're maybe not getting as much from the vehicle sale itself. That's
very likely.
That makes sense.
And like Harold said, maybe rolling it into the purchase price somehow to take a little bit of the sticker shock off initially for insuring a Land Rover.
Next, in this article is more the lack of Land Rover than the inclusion of Land Rover. And this is from jointforces.com out of the UK, light mobility vehicle contenders for 2024. Last week, the UK Ministry of Defense briefed industry on its forthcoming light mobility vehicle requirements as part of the Land Mobility Program. And this happened, I think, back in September. And they had a number of vehicles as part of this light mobility vehicle. There's other kinds of vehicles. There's the light protected mobility. There's medium protected mobility vehicles, but specifically around the light mobility vehicles, several manufacturers or conversion specialists had their vehicles there to present, to show off what they could do. And the list included Babcock Toyota, Ford Ranger, GM Defense Colorado, Enos Grenadier, Mercedes-Benz G-Class. That's the list. Guess what I didn't mention? Any Land Rover. Part of this article is Land Rover Wolf replacement. That's what they're looking to do. These lightweight vehicles are replacing the Land Rover Wolf, and Land Rover apparently is not at the party.
They've got nothing that meets the spec, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess if you wanted the armored models, they've got their SVO unit does sell some armored models, but the price tag is probably a little out of the range.
Right, and I don't think they can deliver in the volume that the military would want because Land Rover is not a big company. They don't make a lot of production, but Also, the military is not interested in something that costs 100,000 pounds, but they also don't want 96 computers on board.
That is very true.
That's a good point.
And also Land Rover, all monocoque or unibody at this point. I think most of those Toyota models are still body on frame. I think the G-Wagon is still, but I don't remember
I
specifically.
think it is, yeah.
Surprised if it wasn't. If you were to send a unibody aluminum vehicle out into the field, Land Rover makes them pretty durable. But
Or
it's not
drop them out of an airplane.
Yeah.
There goes potentially, it sounds like Land Rover's military involvement, at least in the kind of like the
For
fighting.
the time being. Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with their capacity.
And it's not really the target demographic anymore for them. They're not trying to produce something that's durable and utilitarian. It's all upmarket stuff. It's luxury for well-heeled clients, and that's not the military.
Special editions. Yeah, the royal family will certainly still dish out for a couple of models here and there.
Next is the 2025 Range Rover Velar Review, a slick, modern, and pricey family wagon. Couple comments here to read. Coming off a recent refresh, the 2025 Velar is still as sharp looking as ever, even if it isn't as dramatic as Land Rover's other iconic SUVs. While we're on the subject, let's stick with the driving dynamics for a bit. The P250 model, as it happens, packs the same 2-liter turbocharged Ingenium engine as the JLR's other SUVs, including the Evoque, though you get an 8-speed automatic transmission no matter which engine you pick. The P400 model brings the automaker's 3-liter mild hybrid powertrain to the party, putting out 396 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. It's a far more potent option considering the Velar's 2 and a bit ton curb weight, between 4,100 and 4,400 pounds, depending on the engine, and can manage 0 to 60 in just over 5 seconds compared to around 7 for the P250's 4-banger. In fact, and this is the author saying, in fact, while I get having an SUV with lighter steering feel to drive around town, you typically want a smooth and linear response to balance things out so minor inputs don't make the car feel twitchy and nervous on the road. Unfortunately, that's exactly what the Velar does, as the steering wheel feels lifeless and overboosted to the point where I had to make constant corrections even when I wasn't trying to push it too hard. The braking is a similar story. Instead of a solid and linear feel, it's mushy to the extent that you're constantly having to adjust how much pressure you're putting in to actually bring the Velar to a dignified halt. At best, its on-road demeanor is uninspired, and at worst, it just feels downright strange.
So it sounds like they're trying to reproduce some of the heritage Land Rover driving feel.
And if you're looking to do a bit of towing, the P2025 Range Rover Velar can tow just over 5,000 pounds. Ground clearance comes in at 8.4 inches on coil suspension, about average for the class, though you can raise it to 9.9 inches in the off-road 2 setting with the aforementioned air suspension. Interior, step inside the 2025 Velar, and again, you won't see a raft of physical controls covering every square inch of the instrument panel. Now you still get stalks to control the headlights and wipers, as well as buttons on the steering wheel and a switch to move the steering column around. In the center, Land Rover's former rotary dial approach to the gear selector has taken a backseat to a more conventional lever. It's still an electronic shift-by-wire setup, but it does feel more satisfying to use. It also dominates the center stack along with an 11.4-inch touch screen display. Between the two, you get a compartment where the second screen used to be that contains the wireless smartphone charging pad. Instead of Land Rover's old setup, this floating screen is now your interface with the new Pivi Pro operating system. On the whole, it's much more snappier than the in-control system and splits the home screen into different cards, allowing you to access major features like climate control, driver notes, navigation, phone commands. And finally, is the 2025 Velar worth it? There's no mistaking that Land Rover style makes the Velar one of the most visually appealing options in the class. Thing is, depending on your personal taste, there are plenty of other great-looking options to choose from and that are more engaging to drive, just as luxurious, or far better value. The Velar's $64,925 suggested retail price is just the starting point. The Dynamic SE model we tested came in at $76,000 without the better 3-liter engine. If you spec up a P400 model, you can easily tip the scale past the $80,000 mark. So there's your 2025 Velar.
Bottom line, you don't buy a Range Rover for the value.
Yes.
So I'm curious because I didn't look closely enough at photos. That shifter that they described, is it actually on the steering column or is it Defender style and just on the dash?
No, it's right here in the middle, in the center on the base.
Oh, it's in the, okay.
In the center console.
Yeah, but it's this big honking knob looking thing, which of course knob in British speak is completely different than what we say here in America. But yeah, it's this guy right here.
Just as useful.
Next, 2026 Range Rover Sport Electric spied with almost zero camouflage. And the electric Range Rover Sport, debuts next year. And a prototype has been spotted revealing a new grille design is planned. And the electric Range Rover Sport will use the same platform as the gas and plug-in hybrid models. That's pretty much it. There's some pictures if you want to see that. It is definitely a prototype vehicle because it says that on the front. And it's basically very flush.
Honestly, the prototype vehicle seems to be the only camouflage, unless I missed something.
Obviously, it's a production prototype. They've already figured things out, so I guess there's no point in camouflaging anything anymore.
I guess the only camouflage is that they don't have any branding badges on there.
Yes. Yeah, if you didn't know that it was a prototype vehicle because it says it on the vehicle, prototype vehicle, it could just look like any other Range Rover, really.
Yeah,
it'd be better camouflage to take that off of there.
Yeah.
Because it draws your eye in and say, okay, this is something new. What is it? And then you start eyeballing and looking it over. But if that wasn't there, you'd just look right past it.
You would absolutely think it was just a debadged Range Rover. Yeah, the truss mark is missing off the grille.
Oh, that's right. The truss mark.
The oval is there, ready for the trouble.
Right, but there is no green in filling it.
Or black. They do black ones now. And also
yes, they do.
Blacked out ones.
Although, actually, it looks like it might be on the windscreen in a sticker in the upper corner there.
Yeah.
Looks to be a green oval.
It might have to be.
Yeah, they might have to have that since it's a prototype. But of course, it's very possible this may be the future, too. Maybe there's a temporary grille. They might completely get away with that and maybe put the Land Rover inside in the footwell or something.
On the owner's manual in the glove box.
Yes, that they never
will
open
be the
up.
only place you will see the green oval.
Moving on to the classic Defender V8 vehicle, the 110, 2 articles, but the first one I want to mention only for the first line, and this is the Land Rover Defender 110 County, and this is a brand new one. Of course, we'll not be able to get it here in the U.S. for a while, but it starts out with saying, forbidden fruit for the longest time, the Land Rover Defender Industrial Complex now has a firm grip on America. I just found it interesting. The Land Rover Defender Industrial Complex. So there's the next article here does talk more detail about the Defender works. So let's look at that. Clearly something JLR isn't bothered by, rather than letting sheds in Oxfordshire take that business, it's trying its own hand at resto modding. Truthfully, they have for a while. JLR's Classic Works division has been producing continuations and modernized versions of classic models since 2016, and naturally, Defenders have been part of it. That started in 2018 with a small production run of Works V8 Defenders, heavily re-engineering of the 4x4 with a £150,000 asking price. Now, meet this, the classic Defender V8 by Works Bespoke, to give its full name. Under the skin, each is an already registered Defender in order to keep the VIN, stripped back to its chassis, and then modified to accommodate a 5-liter 399 brake horsepower V8 and a new ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox as seen in the modern JLR stuff, before being rebuilt from the ground up with modernized components. New springs and roll bars come from Eibach to remove some of the inherent wobbliness of the Defender, dampers from Bilstein to improve ride comfort, and a set of massive Alcon brakes to make sure it stops within a reasonable distance for a car on the market in 2024. It still retains the usual Defender-ness. Inside, though, in case you were worried or were hoping for something more up-to-date, there is a touchscreen, but it's so small that it's basically useless and an out-of-place gear selector, as seen in the new Defender, but otherwise the functional stuff remains untouched. That does mean the V8 Works has all the foibles of the original. There's still no real room to adjust the driving position. The side mirrors are adjustable in the sense of you use your hands to physically move them, and there's still some of the mechanism in the rear row that requires you to rotate a handle to roll the windows down. Bonkers. In reality, they're all likely to be part of the charm for would-be owners. They'll also be delighted to know that despite the mechanical changes, it still drives like a Defender. You do have to be rich, though. I'll be saving the killer blow for the last because while I want to utterly love the V8's words, it's subjectively hard to give this a 5-star seal of approval knowing how much you need to pay. This one is spec'd is £257,000. Yes, $250,000. Expect something in the ballpark no matter how you option it. Yikes. I don't even see the screen.
Well,
here's the inside. Is that it right there? Is that the screen?
Yeah,
Look how
that's the
tiny
screen.
that is.
So for half of that, you could build something in this country that's every bit as drivable and every bit as nice.
Yes.
With a truck that's legal in this country.
Another good point is if it's going to be registered as a 2012, you could buy it into Canada in 3 years without waiting the whole long
Yes,
time.
I know, Dixon. Rub it in. Let us all know that Canada gets the stuff before we do.
It's only a decade.
Only a decade.
Yeah.
And then we'll be a
and
decade
wait
older.
And wait until we finally get to bring it in and it's all required to match factory. And we get to argue with customs as to which factory's specs matter.
And in another 10 years, will Hedrick still be the defender of defenders
All right.
to help us out?
And that's
Yeah.
2041.
Yeah.
2016 model, 2041. Jeez.
Yeah.
2037, if you want to start with a 2012. Yikes. Yeah.
Right.
I think
But bring me your 1996 Defender and I can build you that now.
Yeah.
For a lot less money.
Hey, and keep it stick. There's no need to make it an automatic. I'm still...
Theft protection.
Exactly. Yes,
Millennial
exactly.
anti-theft. Definitely.
Oh, that's an anti-theft for a lot of people.
You need a good 4 sticks with unprinted knobs on them coming up out of the floor.
Exactly.
Yes. Old, worn, unprinted knobs, no labels. Great.
First thing I do when I build my trucks is I unscrew the knobs that have the numbers on them, and I go out to the industrial supply house and get plain round knobs.
Nice.
One concession, my overdrive knob is covered in plaid.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. The one good thing,
I thought so.
The one good thing is these ones have the Puma bonnet, which is nice.
I don't know. Some people like them, some people don't. They're a polarizing element.
Bugsy, put a tire on it.
There hasn't been a tire on the bonnet in a long time.
Thankfully. I freaking hate tires on the bonnet.
Yes, it's too much.
And my shoulder I'm getting too old to be lifting that hood. And you can't see past the damn thing.
Yes. When you're in a Series 3 and you're not going more than 40, 45 miles an hour, it's fine.
I mean, the best thing I can say about the tire on the bonnet is you really don't have to worry about whether your hood latch fails or not, because that is not coming open.
Yep. So true.
And next, Lake Queen's customized Land Rover with traffic light system to instruct driver up for sale for £80,000. So a little detail on this one. Elizabeth II's customized Land Rover is for sale. The green open-top 1978 Series 3 model was part of the Royal Review convoy of cars that was used for the Lake Queen's public engagements. It was last sold at auction 12 years ago to the late Anglo-German businessman, but the asking price has now more than doubled. The 4x4 was fitted with a customized traffic light system in 1979 with a red, amber, and green control dashboard. The Queen was able to tell the chauffeur how to drive with stop, slow down, and start buttons. The military-style vehicle, which was customized by the late Queen, I like the way they say that, almost like she did it herself. She could have, of course, was originally built by the Central Army Vehicle Depot before being modified to royal specs. Its tailgate was replaced by a pair of tub-height opening doors for easy entry and exit from the back of the car. It remained in military ownership until 2012 when it was sold off. It has that plexiglass too, also. It's a nice looking Series 3. They kept that in good shape. So the new owner did a complete restoration too, by the way.
Yeah, it looks very nice. At first, I thought they were going to describe the Series 1 era trafficators or something in terms of the traffic signals. But it sounds like more of a precursor to the drive your Land Rover by remote technology.
Except there's no buttons for left or right.
True.
Yeah, they don't show any pictures of those buttons. It's just the engine and the outside. That's all we get.
When I saw the headline, I thought it was one of those systems like the fire trucks have that turn all the traffic lights green so you can blow right through. Because the Queen doesn't need to be stopping. She's got places to go and things to do.
Oh, that's true. Very much.
I imagine that she probably was driving with an escort that would just do that anyway.
She's the Queen. She can blow through lights if she wants to. What are you going to do? Give her a ticket?
You can't.
Right.
She does not require having a driver's license.
Exactly. You
They're
can give
her
her
roads.
a ticket, take away her license.
Finally, in Tanzania, they hosted what they're calling the first Global Land Rover Festival. The city of Ashura in northern Tanzania hosted the first ever Global Land Rover Festival that attracted more than 1,000 Land Rovers from across the world. Organizers said, organized by the Ashura Regional Commissioner's Office, the festival that began Saturday, this was in mid-October of 2024, and ended Monday, was aimed at breaking the Guinness World Record for the longest Land Rover parade. 12-kilometer Land Rovers, plural, stretched was aimed to beat the current record set in Germany in 2018 with 632 Land Rovers. The Ashura Regional Commissioner's Office said, the statement said the festival was intended to showcase various Land Rover models, including the classic 108, 109, and 110 Defenders, Range Rovers, and Freelanders. Is that a typo? Was there a 108 or should be a 107?
Well, the Range Rover Classic long wheelbase or the P38 were both 108 inches.
Thank you.
Right.
According to the statement, the Land Rovers on Sunday traveled to the Ashura National Park at the foot of Mount Meru, one of Africa's best trekking routes due to the incredible views from its crater, and will return to the grounds on Monday. In addition to attempting to break the current world record, the festival featured safari adventures, automotive expeditions, and family entertainment. It was also aimed at promoting Tanzania's tourism in the northern corridor. We pulled it up on the map. It's, if you're not familiar, is adjacent to Kenya on the east coast of Africa, and Ashura is right up against the border there with Kenya. And there's the mountain Mount Meru there. So it looks pretty cool. And this is not to be confused with the
global gathering in England.
Thank you. Yes, the global gathering in England, which was taking place in the UK, and they had said they set a record of 640 in 2017 at the Billing Show, although Tanzania said that it was 2018 with 632, so I'm not really sure what's happening there, but then they tried in the UK, tried to do it again in 2023, and they didn't have enough vehicles, and they're going to try again, I believe, in 2025.
I vaguely recall, are they going for the record number of Land Rovers in convoy? Because
excellent
I think part
point.
of the issue in the past with the ones trying to be in convoy is that they have some distance limitations.
Breaks the chain and then it's no longer. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometime, and I think there's a certain duration of time that it has to be in convoy. So sometimes it may seem like they nailed it, and then upon review of footage, they may get disqualified.
Those Guinness boys are sticklers for little details.
The UK one says a group of moving Land Rovers. The Tanzania one said a parade. So I assume parade means moving, but not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I think the only way you'd maintain that following distance on something like a Land Rover is with a chain between each one. Because it misfires or it stops. Imagine that. They might stop running for some reason, and then you break that following distance. But if you have a chain holding them tight, then they're going to get dragged along anyway.
Or they don't break at all, and then they get distant from the one behind it as they smack into the one in front.
Yeah, the problem is Guinness Book probably considers chain-connected vehicles to be one long train vehicle.
Then go for the record for the world's longest road train.
True. And if they're all in four-wheel drive, the longest all-wheel drive or four-wheel, yeah.
Oh, now you're going to split hairs on all-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive.
I'm just saying
so,
that,
Mr. Guinness.
Not the technical term all-wheel drive, but the largest number of drive wheels in a land train, that could be.
That would be what, 256K wheel drive if they had 640 trucks?
Yeah.
All right. That is the news for October of 2024. And now welcome to the CentreSteer podcast live In the studio, it's been a long time since we've had an in-studio guest, is Mark Love. Mark, how are you?
I am excellent.
Mark and I have been friends since I got into Land Rovers way back in 2002/3.
Back in the Freelander days.
Absolutely, yes, thanks to Scooter.
Hence the Freelander John on it.
Absolutely. Mark Love has been part of the Fort Pitt Land Rover group / club since what, its inception?
No, not quite. That was a couple years before me. But since when we go to that first MAR, that would have been like, I can't even remember when that was.
Last century, the 90, probably late 90s?
It might have been 89.
You would have to have been one of the first non-founding members of the club.
Probably.
The club started in 96. So you wouldn't have gone to MAR as a club member before.
In time to make it to the 50th at Greek Peak in 98.
Yes. Yeah, maybe 98 is when now that would have been before I met Scooter and Bill and everybody else, the whole Hee-Haw gang. I think it was the next year I met those guys. They were there and I was there, but we didn't know each other.
Oh, so you went to your first MAR on your own?
Yes, I did, in my Subaru station wagon.
So how did that come about?
I saw it advertised somewhere. Can't remember where. The Greek Peak thing.
50th anniversary?
Yeah, I saw it advertised and thought, that's not that far away. So I loaded up my Subaru station wagon, and my big plan was to go up there and buy all the parts I needed to restore my 1965 2A.
Nice. The one you just finished a couple of years ago.
That's the one. It's been 6 years now. Give me some credit.
Has it been 6 years?
6 years I got it done. But I went up there expecting to see this treasure trove of Land Rover parts for sale.
You figured it was going to be the Carlisle of Rovers.
Exactly. And there was one guy, the little radio flyer wagon with some boxes of parts on it. And there were so many people mobbed around it that I couldn't even get near it. And I thought, I need big stuff, not things that'll fit in a radio flyer wagon. So I just turned around and walked away. The other thing was there was no food, no drink. There was a guy with a half of a 55-gallon drum with a bunch of Diet Coke laying in it in water because the ice had melted. The grass was about 2 feet or 3 feet high. They'd never mowed the place. So I drank a warm Diet Coke, which A, I hate warm, B, I hate Coke, C, I hate Diet Coke. And I said to my wife, I said, we're going to Bully Hill for dinner. We jumped back in the Subaru, drove across country to Bully Hill Winery, had dinner there, and drove home. So I drove 24 hours straight.
For a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And a meal. So you literally day tripped it to the 50th anniversary. Wow. So how did you get into Land Rovers? When did that start?
Somewhere back in the early 80s. Number one, I watched Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
As many did. Yes.
Then in the early 80s, I was at a local foreign car junkyard looking for MGB parts. And I saw 2 series trucks, totally mangled. The inset grill on the front fenders was like, that is so freaking ugly. That's it. They built something that hideously ugly is neat. And so from that point on, I wanted one. Years later, I'm talking about a lot of years later, I was at a friend's mother's funeral and a guy showed up in a Series 2A.
Ooh.
And I asked my buddy who that was, and it was a friend of his. And somehow I never hooked up with the guy, and he passed away. But one day while perusing the good old Auto Trader, in the background of that little 1/2 by 1 ad was a picture of a Land Rover behind a wrecked Jaguar. And I went and bought that Land Rover.
Nice. And what was that?
When was it? Oh, man. That was in 91.
And you bought, what exactly did you purchase?
Bought a 65 Series 2A station wagon, wrecked really hard in the left front. The rear springs were just riding on the floor of the tub because the frame was rotted away and all bent up. So the front is sitting crooked. And it didn't start. You had to tow start it with an ATV. And I attempted to drive it home. Clarion.
Of course you did.
Of course you did, because you're Mark Love. Yes.
I did. But I only made it about 5 miles down the road, and the fuel system clogged up.
Understandably, that's 5 miles farther than anybody else would have made it.
So I towed it back with my Subaru station wagon. Told the guy I'd be up the next day for it, and I sent my dad up with a tow dolly to pick it up.
Bet your dad loved that.
That turned into an adventure because when he was backing around out of a gas station. He hit some lady and knocked her down, and she tried to sue him.
Oh, wow. Oh, oh my.
He claims she walked into the truck. She claims he backed into her and ran her over. And
What happened to that 2A?
I kept it in my driveway for years. And you have to realize at the time, A, I knew nobody else with the Land Rover. And B, I wasn't on anything much on the internet back then, nothing going on. I think it was 91 I bought that.
Nobody was really doing much on the internet in
No.
91.
And my only source of anything to do with parts was I found out there were Land Rover magazines, started buying all those. And in the meantime, I was making $1 a week because my friend would come over for lunch, say, "What are you going to do with that piece of junk?" And I said, "What do you mean piece of junk? It starts to run." He would bet me $1 that it wouldn't start. And I'd put the crank in it, pull the crank and start it, and he'd give me $1.
You're now making money off of a non-moving Land Rover.
I was raking it.
That's righteous income.
It is. I bet I made almost $10 that way.
That's a $52 annual salary.
It is.
And it's good for the Rover because you do need to run it periodically,
Yeah.
keep things lubricated and
Yeah.
moving. Yes. And then what happens? How long does it take you to rebuild that one and get it running?
I got right on it. I didn't waste any time. And I got it together running on the road in 21 years.
That sounds like a typical Land Rover owner. Yes. Yes.
Basically, it set in pieces for
Yeah.
20 years and 6 months.
To finally get all the pieces assembled and get them together. And then,
Actually, it took me 4 months to put it.
and that's the one that we saw at the Vintage Grand Prix a couple of years ago.
Vintage Grand Prix, 75th, that I drove up to Greek Peak. I drive it everywhere.
Is it now that you're daily?
Not exactly daily, but I drive it wherever I
Yeah.
want. I go to the
Yeah.
grocery store in it. I take it to breakfast in the morning. I drive it wherever I want to drive it.
Nice, nice. We're back in the 90s, and that's your first Land Rover, is the
Yes.
Series 2. Did you name it?
I don't need
That's good intel to know.
They're Land Rover.
They're Land Rovers. What's the next Land Rover?
Well, I was really getting bummed out after I went to the Mart twice. Once in my brown Volkswagen Vanagon and once in the red Volkswagen Vanagon. The year I went in the brown Vanagon, that's when I actually met Scooter and Billy Fisher. That's the year that the hurricane wiped out the whole Mar rally a week before the rally.
So that's every Mar.
But that year they were out there with bulldozers and stuff trying to rebuild trails and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it was
This is the one where the Mar got rained out before it even started versus the ones that rain out in process.
Exactly. And I had got on the gun. I think it was a Guns N' Roses site. It was a bulletin board type of thing more than a forum. Here's this guy named Scott C. Wickham III who was going to the Mar, and he was local. He was meeting up with this guy from Ohio named Billy Fisher. They were meeting about, 6 or 8 miles from my house. So I thought, why not? I just went down and met him at the old McDonald's where they meeting and pulled into my Volkswagen Vanagon. Of course, Billy Fisher, trying to be the smartass, says, "Hey, we're going to this Land Rover rally in Virginia. You got this Vanagon, you should come along." And I looked around and like there was nothing. I got nothing else going on. Okay. Which made Billy Fisher's eyes pop out. And then I introduced myself as the guy talking interweb. But it got right back at Billy Fisher.
Oh, absolutely. So you went in not telling them that you knew what was going on.
Right.
And they invite you right then and there. And
Yeah,
you're
just
like,
being a smartass.
Sure.
Smartass guy.
so you did then attend. That's when you went to your first Mar. In
Yeah.
your Vanagon.
And I followed Billy and Scooter into the place. And it was just nothing but. And I knew that if anybody hit the brake, I was camping in the middle of the road because I wasn't moving. And we got in there and pulled up to the usual campsite at the top of that one trail by the radio tower.
Electrical tower.
Yeah, electrical
Mhm,
tower.
mhm.
When we pulled in there, I said, "This thing's not moving till it dries out." And Billy Fisher got out and said, "Damn, I never thought you." He said, "I can't believe you."
Sounds like Bill. That sounds like something Bill would say.
So that was
Yes.
the first Mar.
Did you get to off-road then? Did you, or with maybe jump in with others?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Scooter was putting a transfer case in the mighty Zebra truck. So that took him the whole weekend. So I think he got off road about 17 minutes. And so I rode with a bunch of other people and had a good time.
And did this cause you to want to get a functioning Rover then?
It did. So the next year we went down in Lisa's van. And then that was like really like the icing on the cake. I got to have a truck now.
And that was,
That's when I bought the Series 1 off of eBay.
oh, tell us that story.
Just popped up on eBay and it was in Maryland. I thought Maryland isn't that far away. So I watched it go off and nobody bid. So I got it for the opening bid.
What was it exactly?
That's probably the last time in history that a Series 1 will receive no bids.
Probably. You're probably right there.
That was a 1958.
Oh, it's a 58. the
58.
Series 1,
Okay.
yeah.
Last year,
So you picked that up. Did you drive that back?
No, I didn't. I brought that back on a tow dolly because it had no brakes. But I did jump in at the guy's house and take off down the road in it. And he's yelling, there's no brakes. And Scooter's standing there. And Scooter said, don't worry, he's not that big on brakes anyway. I drove it down the road, round through the housing development stuff, and brought it back and drove up the ramps on the tow dolly. And the poor guy was like beside himself. Feel like, number one, I hadn't paid it for it yet. And number two, the liability, it's his truck and I'll drive with no brakes.
But it doesn't go fast.
No,
brakes are for quitters.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I ever drove a Rover. And that's the first time I ever drove a right-hand drive truck.
Wow. It's right onto the tow dolly.
Right under the tow dolly.
It sounds like another Mark Love story. That's another Mark Love story. Wonderful.
Another demonstration of that trademark lust.
Yes.
And that was a one-day turn. I was a drive down, load it up, drive back from Baltimore, sleep for 2 hours, go out in the driveway, and everybody showed up. Scooter showed up, and John Humphrey showed up, and I must have fixed the brakes. I don't know. I don't know if I fixed the brakes or not. But anyway, we took the hard top off, put the soft top on. And Scooter jumped in, and John Humphrey jumped in, and Lisa jumped in, and it was blocked in with everybody's cars. So I drove up over the brick retaining wall of my driveway, down to the neighbor's yard, down past their house, and not the neighbor's front yard, and I took it down the road.
Without any brakes?
Possible.
You can neither confirm nor deny.
Possible.
What happens to that truck?
I think I put about 75,000 miles in it. I drove that. That was my daily driver for, I don't know, 8 years, 6 years, 8 years. Yeah, a lot of years. And then I found some crazy guy to buy it off.
Some jackass who just, rumor has it, he's on a podcast somewhere.
Yeah. I started diesel converting that truck. I pulled the stock motor out, put a Mercedes diesel in it.
And the diesel is another story in and of itself, how you got that.
I was looking for a 4-cylinder Mercedes diesel engine. Once again, eBay came through. Once again, nobody else bid. So I bought this 240D in Connecticut for $500.
The opening bid.
Yeah, nobody else bid. And pure coincidence, never planned it. Nick Danger is driving through town, our local superhero or non-local superhero. He's driving through town, and he stayed at the house that night. And I said, hey, can I catch a ride home with you? And he says, you're home. I said, no, I'm talking about your home. And turns out he lived like 10 or 15 miles from me. So Nick drove me up to get the car, and I just gave the guy the $500, turned the key, and drove it home. But the guy says, oh, good luck getting it home. Where are you from? And I said, it's Pittsburgh. He says, oh, man, that must be a little town around here. I don't know. I said, the one in Pennsylvania where they make steel. And his eyes bugged out, and he says, I never said this truck was safe to drive to Pittsburgh. And I said, does it start? And he said, yes. I said, then we're good to go. I got in it, and Nick wanted to have dinner with his wife. So I jumped in the truck and fired it up, and I met them in a Mexican restaurant, had dinner, pulled into a gas station to put air in the tires. It had a donut spare on the back.
This is the Mercedes diesel.
The Mercedes diesel.
Just be clear. You said truck a couple times.
I'm
I
sorry.
want to be clear that it's the
They're
diesel.
built like trucks,
Yeah.
so it's a pass.
So I pulled into this gas station. I thought, I'll air up the tire in the trunk and see if there's a leak. And if not, I'll just put the tire on so I get 4 tires the same. And when I pushed the nozzle onto the valve stem, it just pushed the brass core right into the rubber, right into the. So I was like, I guess I'm not using that. I think I put 30 pounds of air in all 4 tires, including the donut spare. Literally got in and drove to Pennsylvania. The exhaust was only about 24 inches long. It was broken loose. So I had earplugs. I put earplugs in.
Non-existent, I think is the word you're looking for.
Yeah. And I got into some construction in New Jersey, and I got pulled over by a New Jersey cop. And he says, you know I pulled you over? I said, no, I don't. He says, you're going too slow. I said, all this construction I hit, it broke my exhaust, and I'm looking for a turnoff there where there might be a shop to fix my exhaust. So he says, okay, good luck with that, and have a great day, and never asked to see my paperwork or anything.
Which didn't exist anyway.
I didn't have anything, no. I think the guy wrote me a bill of sale, which, big deal. I had no insurance, no plates, no stickers, none. And then I got off the PA Turnpike. There was a big sign that said detour, which I thought was a detour on the turnpike, which I, looking back, think that wasn't it. But anyway, I ended up in the middle of nowhere with this loud exhaust that o'clock in the morning. And I get put over by this local cop. And he wasn't real happy with me. And when nothing
Well,
matched.
sure, you woke up his town.
Yeah. None of the numbers matched on anything. And I had no owner's card. And I think I put the plate from my other 240 diesel on it, but it wasn't the right one. And it had a Connecticut inspection sticker on it and all this stuff. He got a little bit cranked up with me and playing the dummy, which is easy to do for me. I said, I thought I had 5 days to take care of all this. He says, he makes this little circle with his thumb and finger. He says, you know what this is? This is 0. You got 0 days. And he ended up literally throwing my cards back in the window at me. I mean, literally threw them at me and turned around to walk away all pissed off. And I stuck my head out the window and I said, hey, while you're here, could you direct me back to the turnpike?
Wow. Wow.
And he really looked at me with a pretty incredulous look like, this guy can't be serious. And he said, just drive straight and don't stop any. And I got back on the turnpike, drove the whole way home. I left at 7 in the morning and got home 7 in the morning the next day.
Wow. So you really were driving slow.
I kept it at 55 because the tires were, you could see the cords, the tires, they were all dry rotted.
Oh my.
I mean, you could literally see the nylon cords in the tires. So I get home, sleep for 2 hours. A buddy of mine comes over. I'm going to just yank the engine out of this thing. And he says, oh, I see you took the battery cables loose already. He lifted the battery terminal right off the battery. And I said, no, I didn't get any tools out yet. And he just shook his head. He just couldn't believe it. I mean, when they put the new battery in it, they never tightened the terminals up. They set them.
He drove all the way from Connecticut to Pennsylvania with loose terminals.
But the key is, once it starts, shut it off. You don't shut it off, you don't touch anything. The only thing I touched mistakenly, I broke my own rule. My rule is you don't touch anything you don't have to touch. And when I was sitting in traffic in New Jersey, I opened the glove box to see if anything was inside it. The glove box would not close. But luckily, the light inside it. So I just blew it in my eyeball. So I had to reach over when I was going down the road and just rip the light out of it. And I thought, by rule, we touch anything.
Even when the cops pulled you over, you don't turn it off?
No.
Isn't it loud?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and they don't tell you to turn it off?
But it's idling.
Interesting. So the engine came out of that and eventually went into your Series 1.
Went into Series 1 that Harold now has that never quite got finished.
One of these years, I'll get around to it.
Is it still functional and moving, or is it?
Depends on your definition of those terms.
It's a
It
frame.
moves when you shove it.
Yeah, it's a frame
I
with
see.
the tub on it. I think the bulkhead's still on it, but the bulkhead's really
No.
junk.
Bulkhead is next to it.
But I bought a galvanized bulkhead for it. I got. So Harold got the new galvanized bulkhead. And I have a galvanized 86-inch chassis, too, that went with it.
Yeah, there's an 86-inch chassis leaning up in the corner of the shed next to the 88-inch truck.
Hey, what's 2 inches among friends?
That's right. That's right. So you bring the Mercedes back. You then get your Series 1 up and running with that.
No, I never did.
Never did.
Never did.
Okay.
Then in the midst of all that, and actually before that, sometime during all this stuff, ended up going to Canada, and I won another eBay auction. There was a guy up in Nova Scotia called John Cranfield, who was a big rover guy back in the 80s, and he got wounded with a high lift jack, lost an eye, lost control of the handle of the high lift jack, and sticking
Hate when that
himself,
happens.
and it whacked him in the head, and he actually lost an eye.
Don't do that.
Don't
they,
try this at home.
So they had a charity auction for him. So I bought this Series 3 Canada, and that was going to be Lisa's truck to drive. So we drove to Canada, another round trip, drive to Canada, pick that up, drag it back.
Where in Canada? Canada's a very large place. You don't remember? It was Ontario, Quebec? Probably Ontario.
Can't tell you.
Okay.
Canada.
Okay.
So we meet this guy, told him I'd be there. I get there on time. Turns out he's leaving for work in like 37 seconds. So we throw this thing on the tow dolly, which was that first huge mistake. No tow dolly. No more tow.
You're saying you no longer use
Right.
tow dollies.
That's
Okay.
a mistake.
Is this the story about why you no longer
Yes.
use tow dollies? Okay.
So we dragged this tow dolly all the way to Canada, load this truck up, and then this guy lived in the middle of nowhere. But at the bottom of the hill from his house was a little, you could kindly call it a little gas station convenience, but more like a dilapidated mining encampment. But anyway, so I pulled in there thinking, double check the straps, tires, and make sure we're good to jump on the highway and blast home. And once again, got nabbed with the old rotted out valve stem I go to check the air in the back tire, and the valve stem falls out of the rubber. The brass insert falls out of the rubber. But I was smart to bring 2 spare tires. When I jack it up to put this tire on, the wheel kind of goes blonk down at a funny angle.
Uh-oh.
So I pulled the axle, and there's only one hub nut against the bearing. No washer, no lock tab, no second lock. So that was never going to make it home.
Nice.
So I called the guy.
Let me guess, it's on the left side, so as you're going forward, it's unscrewing said nut.
There you go.
Nice.
So I called the guy, and I said, hey, we're missing axle nuts. Well, the call wasn't very good, the connection. He could hardly hear me. I could hardly hear him. And I'm standing there thinking, now what am I going to do? Because the call just dropped. Like a minute later, here comes this guy flying into the parking lot, and he sticks his arm out the window with a Ziploc baggie and nuts and washer. Says, gotta go, and just on the gas, and he's gone. But he did have hub nuts, and I had a hub nut socket.
Wow.
I didn't want to try and like tear everything apart. So this place had STP, this convenience store. So I bought a bottle of STP and poured it in the wheel bearings the best I could and jammed it all back together and towed it back out.
And this is why you don't use tow dollies?
That's why no more tow dollies.
So how do you transport your Rovers
Trailer.
now? Trailer,
Yeah.
full trailer. Gotcha. Did you have any problems at the border?
Lisa worked for American Eagle, and she talked to the guy that does all their import stuff. He gave her his cell number. I don't care, anytime, day or night, call me. I'll tell you what you need to do or something, but you should have these forms and do this and that. So I pull up to the border. They waved me up, and the guy said, anything to declare? I said, no. He said, okay, and waved me.
With your
The trailer with a truck hanging off the back of it.
With a tow dolly with a truck on the back and a bed full of parts.
Thing to declare.
And I said, no, and he said, okay.
I declare that I am addicted to Land Rovers.
That was it, one word.
Wow. Didn't want to deal with it, probably. Yep. Or your number wasn't
Yeah.
up. It wasn't the random selection.
Once again, we see a demonstration of the trademark luck.
But here's the thing. Here's where the luck ran out. Somebody with a lot of talent skinned that entire truck steel.
Oh, wow.
Bedsides were steel. The doors were steel. And I'm thinking the fenders, the sides of the wing skin were steel. It was all steel.
That's a little different.
It was weird. Whoever did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't tell under all the layers of paint.
Until
Oh.
it starts to rust.
So I got that together and got it running. And I was going to really like do it up nice for Lisa. And when I found out it was all steel, I was like, I don't think I want to deal with it. So I sold it to Scooter.
And did that become one of his hybrids?
No, I think he ended up, the other thing was it was a homemade frame under that. Entire frame
Oh, I remember that
was
chassis.
home built. But I tell you what, it must have weighed 9,000 pounds because it was like 1/4-inch wall, 3x4 box tubing.
The term robust is a severe understatement.
It was an unbelievable chassis, but there were no
Like-
shock mounts on it.
Like the bare chassis weighed as much as a completed stock Rover.
Yeah. But I took a stock frame. I think it was the old frame out of Lisa's next truck that I bought. The one we went to Baltimore and got. And I cut all the shock mounts out of that frame. Gave him to Scooter, and I said, here, get a hole saw, put the shock mounts in it. You got a good frame. So he started putting his truck, the old Herman truck, on that frame, Zebra truck. After I bought that and sold that back to him.
Okay.
Because he sold that truck to my buddy Rob. I bought it off my buddy Rob and sold it back to Scooter.
And then Scooter sold it to our friend Dave.
Yes,
And I'm not sure where it went after that. But
Oh,
yeah, Rovers get around here.
they do.
They do. All right. So you have the Series 3 from Canada. Then what's the next Rover that enters your personal life?
Well, when I realized that the steel truck wasn't going to get it, Billy Fischel found this truck over in Dayton, Ohio, Series 3, with a bad transmission. And the bad transmission is a key part of the story. It's really hilarious down the road. So once again, I break my rule. I run a tow dolly, go to Dayton,
you
Ohio.
haven't learned yet about
not learned.
learned your tow dolly rule.
Go to Dayton, Ohio, pick this truck up off the guy. Coming back, and I'm on the last leg home, coming up 79 North. And this guy passes me, and he's honking the horn and waving. I thought, oh, Rover fan. He was actually
Sure.
honking the horn and waving because the left rear tire was coming apart. the cords come out of it and just beat the hell out of the left rear tub skin.
Oh,
Luckily, I had 2 spare tires with me, so I stopped, changed the tire, and they'd come home. And it was actually a nice truck, except for one thing. It was a Series. I just plastic dash, synchronous transmission.
No self-canceling turn
Yeah,
signals.
so it's too modern for
Way
you, is
too
what you're
modern.
saying. Gotcha.
It got sold to Dave Bartley. Dave sold it to my buddy Donald. Donald sold it to crazy guy in South Hills. And
then it went in my shop.
Oh, you have it now.
no,
No. Oh, no. It got abandoned at my shop
Yeah.
for 19 months while the guy
Right.
figured out what he wanted to do.
oh, he did a little
Yeah.
jail time too, I think.
I think so.
Then it ended up in Utah, I think. Somebody in Utah.
I thought it ended up in Canada.
Yeah, I don't know.
Last time I talked to somebody up in Canada looking to see if I had parts for it. Hey, what is what you get, pal?
Yeah. But then when I decided the Series 3 was through Series 3, when I sold that, then I went down to another Baltimore trip and bought the 2A that Lisa drove for a lot of years.
And was there any interesting luck involved in the 2A?
No, it was that whole thing was pretty easy other than it needed a chassis. I brought it home and then we drove down to Tennessee, picked up a chassis off David Gage, built that roof garage. It's no longer. Then I took 5 weeks, put a whole galvanized chassis in the truck in 5 weeks.
In your
Driveway.
driveway,
Yeah.
because you don't have a proper
I have a
garage.
great garage, just nothing fits in it, especially Rover.
You did everything else.
It's a toolbox with 2 roll-up doors.
That's it exactly, Harold.
Yes, and you did everything outside.
Yeah, everything was done outside. So I did that. And I literally got it done like 2 days before we went to the birthday party in Canada. I
Nice.
drove up to Canada and back.
No issues.
It's about 12 fuel filters.
Okay.
The guy that I got it from, it was bought off a private owner, but it was sitting at a foreign car repair shop. And the guy that owned the shop said, the one thing you don't have to worry about is the fuel system, because we just went through the entire fuel system. That's why it was here. And I went through easily a dozen fuel filters, and a tank was so full of shit.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it was. But that was a good truck. And then I took that to Harold's shop and put a diesel in it, 4-day diesel conversion, and drove it for years after that. And then now John has it. Sold it to John work.
That's right. Yeah, John Dow now has that
Yeah.
truck. Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Big John.
That's one of the 3 engines that got distributed amongst yours and my vehicles.
Yes.
And what about more modern vehicles? I know you work on, or have worked anyways, on Discoveries and other such things.
Yeah,
but-
somewhere along the line, we bought a Disco. Drove that for 4 or 5 years. Took that to the Mar once or twice.
It was a D1, right?
Yeah, D1.
Drove it not quite as long as you wanted to, but a certain icy road and a utility pole changed your plans.
Yeah, Lisa drove that right to a telephone pole. Fixed that one right up. Then I had a really nice 99, I think, 98 or 99 Range Rover.
Oh yeah, I don't think I remember you having a Range Rover.
I didn't have
Okay.
it very long. I bought
Yeah.
that off my buddy Bruce. Then I sold it to Scottish Bob, and that got in a flood and got destroyed.
Oh, that's right. That flood when it took out his.
Bunch of stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of he just got his Escort.
Yeah.
It just finally got that back on the road. But
Right.
that was part of that. It was in that low-lying area right
Yep.
next to the parkway. Yeah, that's right. And any other more modern, or you basically are staying anything that has a metal dash?
It did Rover. Harold's looking at me funny. He's done a
ain't
good job
looking at
biting his
all.
tongue. First, we got to back up the Series 3 with the bad transmission. So when I got that home, I put a transmission in. I drove it for probably a year. And basically, there was a problem with the first reverse lay shaft. Because when you put it in reverse, it would just bang, bang. It worked, but it just made this hellacious banging noise. It took the whole truck.
Something tells me it's missing a few teeth.
Probably, which is exactly why Billy Fischel passed on buying the truck, because he didn't want to put a transmission in. So I put a transmission in after a year or two, I don't know. Billy Fischel's going on a trip. I can't remember if it was a birthday party or the Mar, one of the two. And his transmission was bad. He called me up and said, "Do you have a transmission?" I said, "Yes, I do. And it's yours for the taking." So he came over to get it. And I said, "By the way, don't count on reverse going too far." I said, "It works, but it might not be the best." So Billy Fischel put that transmission, his truck, to go on a trip, had 0 issues other than the banging noise in reverse.
Reverse is only for people who can't plan ahead.
Exactly.
So the one he passed on, he eventually has to.
And yes, ended up with it in his truck, which is very ironic.
That is actually, that is.
Yes.
Yes, that sounds like a Bill thing to happen. So speaking of the birthday party, we've gone, you and I have been to the birthday party.
Years, yeah.
A couple years. We've been to Mar. And I know your luck seems to also extend to off-roading. And I know I've gotten into a couple pickles, and then you're right there to make sure I know that I've had some issues.
Occasionally.
In other words, to remind you where you screwed up.
Well, the first thing to remember is just Series 1's rule. Series 1's just, they were built right. That's the right truck.
You think they should have stopped after making the Series 1?
No, they should have stopped after the 2A. Not stopped. They just should have never changed from the 2A.
Okay. The 2A is the ultimate Land Rover, in your opinion? Okay.
Definitely.
Interesting.
Definitely.
Because
I started putting the goofy coily springs on things, brakes that clamp on biplates, stuff.
Those turn signals that cancel themselves.
Seat belts.
Oh,
dashes that have some padding. Okay.
if you think a Series 3 dash really has padding, you obviously haven't bounced your face off.
I try not to, actually. I know that's just, I know that padding is just decorative. Yeah. We know it's decorative, yes.
It was a giant step backwards when they changed the dash out to one that you can't open beer bottles while you're driving.
Definitely. Definitely.
Although, I tell you, we've been off-road a number of times, and there was, I think, when the Mar that took place, I think, at McKegg's farm, there was some slipperiness. You had taken your Series 1, and you actually had trouble where others didn't. And that was one of the highlights of me off-roading with you, was you actually had problems when others didn't.
Oh, no, that was in one of those Johnstown runs.
This was clearly down at Mar. Yeah, it was a slippery. It was light leaves. It were like damp, and there was some mud.
Oh yeah, I remember what you're talking
and you're
about.
trying to and you couldn't get enough run to get up the hill.
Yeah, I think that wasn't Lisa's truck.
That might have been Lisa's
we were
truck.
In Lisa's
yeah,
truck.
I think that was Lisa's
because
truck.
That's the only time I ever put a mark on something off road. I put a ding in her fender. I ripped the roof rack halfway off.
And you also hit the roof rack.
Yeah.
Got hit and got smushed to the side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. The only time. You've never had any other issues ever.
I remember that roof rack damage. So it was definitely after I'd come along.
Yeah, it tried to rip the roof rack right off.
It did. It actually wasn't as bad as you thought, because it just didn't push it askew a bit, and I think you were able to.
No, I just left it go because if you straightened it, you were going to break all the legs off.
Okay.
So I left it all crooked, and I took it home and took it off, and straightened all the legs up, welded them back, and then welded little braces on them, so that next time I do that, it'll just rip the roof off the truck instead of hurting the roof rack.
Clearly.
Then you reinforce the roof. Next time you rip the entire body off the truck. You just keep working your way down with the reinforcements.
Right, just the weakest link. Right. Find that every time.
Right. Do you enjoy going off-road and driving your trucks?
I do, but this truck, now that the 65's done, it's a highway queen. It's Chelsea tractor, as they say.
Goes to shows, that's about it.
At this point in the interview, we should point out that we've had this long litany of Rovers, during which the first one he ever bought is still sitting over in the corner of his driveway waiting for him to get around to fixing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it was just a little past 20 years from the time I bought it to the time I was driving it. In the meantime, I had Series 1, couple Series 3s, a Disco, the Range Rover. Actually, I think I had 3 or 4 Discos. Didn't drive them all, but bought them, used them, parted them, whatever.
And non-Rovers. You had Mercedes and Volvos and
Rolls Royces. And
that's right. You had the Rolls Royce for a while. That's right. What was that like?
I'll tell you what. There's a reason they call them Rolls Royces that people look up to, because they are phenomenal. That thing was just appreciated for what it is. It was a 1981, so it had 81 conveniences, not 2024 conveniences. But you could tell you were isolated from everything. It just rolled down the road, just gas station to gas station, smooth as silk.
And whenever there was any valve taps, you never heard it?
How could you tell?
Exactly. Yeah. You're isolated
from
that.
And the best part about it was, at the time I had it, down on Route 8, this lady, Taco Shelley, had a little taco trailer parked in a defunct used car lot. And I would drive it in the Rolls and have lunch there.
Because you could. Just good food, and you rolled in with your Rolls.
Yeah,
nice.
A bunch of us would jump in the Rolls and pile down there for lunch. It was like the ultimate lunch wagon.
Have you always been into cars, and was that something when you were growing up?
I've gone through phases. I either go into foreign stuff or luxury American stuff or high performance. I've been through everything from an Isetta to a Rolls Royce and everything in between, you know, up Camaros and Challengers and Trans Ams and stuff like that, or old vintage stuff. I drove really like British cars. Like I put 100,000 miles on an MGA back in the early 80s. It was my everyday car.
Nice.
I put 100,000 miles on an MGA in 3 years.
Wow. Where are you driving?
Where I went.
That's a lot of driving.
I drive a lot.
Did you work from home then? Because I knew you had you're working at a garage, right?
Yeah,
Or
I
a
was working
dealership.
at a motorcycle dealership.
Okay.
Yeah, I drive myself.
Yeah, you do. So you're also into motorcycles.
Was.
Okay, no longer?
Nah, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. You've retired, if I understand, from working on vehicles,
Yes.
right? So you're no longer assisting people in their...
Somehow yesterday I was laying underneath a Riley Elf Mark II putting the steering wheel.
Were you still outdoors?
No, I was in somebody's garage.
Okay.
This is the questionable definition of the term retirement.
Yeah, it is. I basically down to I really pick and choose.
And he sends the rest to me.
For everybody else,
Thank
I give
you.
them Harold's personal hotline phone number.
There we go.
Tell them it answers 24/7.
The secret number.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mhm. Feel free to call me at 3 a.m.
Yeah, call Harold. It answers
I'll be
24/7.
waiting for your call.
Was your father or a car person that got you into it, or did you just happen to do it on your own?
He was always kind of car nut, except that we never had any money for him to act on it. And finally, I'm thinking probably it was about 5 or 6 years before he passed. I bought him a 65 Barracuda off eBay down in Florida. And I flew down and picked it up and drove it back for him. In 65, we bought a Barracuda brand new.
Okay.
And of all the bad cars to buy in 1965, when you got 2 little kids at home, a 2-door Barracuda. And shortly thereafter, all the kids in the neighborhood started going to the YMCA. Of course, it was a carpool thing. It was his turn to drive, trying to fit 6 neighborhood kids in a 2-door Barracuda. So the poor Barracuda got traded in on a 66 Plymouth station wagon.
Ooh.
And that had to be a hellacious blow for my dad.
I'm sure it was.
And then after that, he bought a really nice 41 Ford Coupe. But back in those days, it wasn't a street rod or anything. It was just a nice 41 Ford Coupe with a flathead in it that burned equal amounts of gas and oil. And once again, no extra money, 2 kids at home, you know, that got sold off for something more practical. But so he never got to act too much on his car interest other than books, magazine.
And live vicariously through you.
Yeah, kind of.
Because I know he helped you on some of your adventures.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
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 He was a machine shop guy professionally.
Yeah, he was a
wasn't
machinist. So he had a lot of cylinder heads for me and flywheels and made stupid shit, fixed dumb stuff I did and whatever. Yeah, he bailed me out of 9 million different.
But that probably helped to give you a good background growing up, too.
Yeah, I worked in a machine shop with him when I was still in school part-time. Basically, I learned that if you walked around with a file in your hand, nobody asked you what you were doing.
Okay.
Because they didn't want to know, probably.
Probably, but all you had to do is have a file in your hand.
Okay.
They figured you had a purpose, so they didn't bother you.
I see. Okay. So it showed you were doing something.
Exactly.
I see. Interesting.
You were on the trail. You were about to do something they probably didn't want to know about.
Exactly. All you need is a file.
And does that inform why you carry with yourself a crescent wrench in your pocket at all times? Does that come from that formative knowledge?
No, it doesn't. I learned that from Jim Boffo Motors fame. You're in the Pittsburgh area and you're a British car, Boffo Motor. And I started working there in 1974. And
They're still around, aren't they?
they are. I hang out there most every other Friday morning. I hang out. They're still down there working on cars, wrenching on things, doing things that nobody should be doing.
So you worked there for a period of time.
I worked there in 74 and 5.
Mhm.
Then I went back in 80, 81, back in 80, 84 or something.
And why did you learn to carry a crescent wrench with you?
Well, just Jim always had one in his pocket. It's just amazing the things you can tighten up or whatever with that 4-inch crescent. There's a lot of stuff. Started carrying a 4-inch crescent.
Everything but hub nuts.
Pretty much.
Is that the very same crescent wrench in your pocket now? Is that the one you've had since the 70s?
No, the one I've had since the 70s is in my top dresser drawer, so I don't.
Nice. So this is
a replacement that has almost as much, but not quite as much sentimental value. So I
sure.
have the original one squirreled away with all my other wonderful treasure.
It's gold plated and wrapped in satin.
Surprised you haven't framed it and put it on the wall.
I'm running out of wall space with some of my treasures, but it still has the original. I painted the letters that say crescent wrench red with red paint that I was mixing up for a Mini Cooper. I was doing a quarter panel.
The paint's never worn off, is what you're
It's
saying.
flaked off here and there, but it's still enough.
Okay. Probably leaded paint.
Nah, but probably lacquer paint that you can't buy anymore.
Good paint.
All right, so it's pouring down rain, and we're caravanning to the Mar Rally. We have Scooter with his truck is maybe going to make it.
Do you know what year this is? Or
No
what Mar?
idea.
Okay. Was I there?
And then we have a guy along in his Freelander,
Oh,
supposed to be the dependable vehicle.
this would have been maybe 2004 or 2005.
So we're cruising along the turnpike,
I remember the
and we
story.
get this communication. Hey, battery light's on and things are slowing down. So we said, John, you get between Scooter and I, turn your lights off, turn your heater off, turn your wipers off, turn everything off, follow us. So we get off at the Somerset exit and pull into the Eaton Park in Somerset underneath a big parking lot. And it's raining cats and dogs. We get out, open the hood of the mighty Freelander, and wouldn't you know it, but the main battery wire to the alternator is pretty much burned up. Somebody left it loose. It actually burned half the nut away. And the 4-inch crescent wrench comes out of my pocket. The nut comes off. The roll of electrical tape comes out of my console of my Rover. And we tape it all up, tighten it back up. And I think it's probably still that way sitting in Harold's driveway.
May very well be. I think that was 05, now that I think of it. That was the first of the 2 rained out Mars that we were at.
Yeah.
It was less rainy. The second one was completely rained out.
Right.
When Scooter decided to leave mid-event.
Yeah.
That was the year of the sideways rain, I think.
Yes.
So that was the one where Scooter goes, all right, I've had enough.
He had a little booty call.
That too. Yes.
That's when he sold everything he owned.
Yes, he did.
For $5.
Yes.
And that's when I told him, I says, you should pay us money to keep this stuff and package it up because we're going to have to store it and clean it and dry it.
Yes. So the 4-inch crescent wrench saved the Freelander.
It did. It did. Absolutely. I remember that. Yes. I remember the lights flashing going out.
Now you know why I carry a 4-inch crescent wrench.
And it came in handy. This
Yes.
was wonderful. Any other crescent wrench save the day stories?
There's actually a number of them. You can't believe what that stupid thing is fixed. Tons of stuff.
There you go.
We were leaving tomorrow one day in the Series 1, and the clutch was acting real funny. I just rolled underneath and adjusted the clutch and drove it the whole way home to find out that the shear pin on the clutch linkage is broken. And it just, barely made it. It's hard to believe it made it home. It was like nothing holding.
There's more to
If you
love
don't
luck.
stop and you know how to shift without a clutch, you don't really need it.
Yeah, clutches aren't that. It's like brakes. The people that can't drive.
They're really, either one of them are really for only if you want to stop. So if you don't stop, you don't need them.
That's the key.
Don't stop. Don't turn it off.
Don't touch anything.
You don't touch anything, you don't have to. Nothing that's not mission critical.
There you go. There you go. If you learn anything from this interview with Mark Love, don't touch anything that's not mission critical.
Exactly. You don't.
That might just be our show title.
Here's a non-rover but related story. Another road trip to Montana. Rode to Missoula, Montana on BMW motorcycle. A guy was along with us on a brand new bike, week old. So we're in the middle of this fairground at Missoula, Montana. And he decides that he's buying these cool lights at the rally for his bike. And they're a factory BMW. So they do fit, plug right in. There's no hokey stuff going on. And I said to the guy, I said, Tom, skip those home, put them on at home in your garage. Oh, no, this just plugs right in. You can't make a mistake. 15 minutes later, he had made a mistake and he burnt the entire wiring harness out of his motorcycle.
Wow.
In the middle of a fairground.
2,000 miles from home.
Yep. It was a model year change. They changed the entire wiring harness. So there was not one in the United States. He spent his entire 4 days, instead of hanging out the rally and having fun and riding around the area, electrical taping and replacing wires. And of course, Harold will know this. When you're working with burn electrics, it's in your nostrils, it's in your clothes, it's in your skin. You will smell that for days.
Wow. So he had to jury rig his own electrical system just to get the bike to run.
Exactly.
There's a fun trip.
So there's a perfect lesson for the rule. You don't touch anything unless it's mission critical.
So where have you traveled? You've been to the birthday party. You've been to Virginia. Have you gone out west and taken any of your Rovers?
Not
out
in the
that far?
Rovers.
Okay, that's more of those motorcycles and the Vanagon?
Yeah, motorcycles. We were, man, New York State, out west, down south, Virginia a lot, West Virginia, Ohio, and Montana, Illinois, Indiana, New York. Not clear coast to coast, but covered a lot of ground.
You had all of these rovers, and you eventually get to the point where, okay, you have this one rover that you bought 20 million years ago, and you haven't touched it. It's been sitting in the corner just waiting for the time. You've been accumulating parts when you get them. And then, of course, the parts you had earmarked, you're putting on other trucks instead. So then you're getting more parts. So at what point did you realize you needed to be done with all this foolishness and just fix the one that you'd gotten to start with?
I was sort of feeling pretty beat up working on vehicles all the time, and down on your knees and this and that. And I just realized that time was coming to a close. And I thought, if I'm going to expend some energy, it's finally going to be my truck. My dad had passed away. Didn't leave me a ton, but he left me some money that was just like the perfect time to take some of that money and just do whatever it took to finish the Rover. Instead of piecemealing it together, looking for bargain stuff. Over the years, I'd accumulated from parting out trucks, buying people's old parts and stuff, all the parts I wanted for that truck, which got to be less and less as time went on because I went from a four-wheel drive station wagon to like basic as you could get with a truck cab, no winches, no accessories, no nothing. And I just decided it's like just one day I said, it's like now or never. So that's when I started on it.
And from that moment, you were doing this outside in your driveway?
Yes.
And from that moment, it took you 4 months?
Yeah, about 4 months. I think I started on it, I think it was June when I pulled it up in front of the garage. Pushed forward, I think I towed it up. Because it was a new galvanized chassis with a front and rear axle under it on a brand new set of parabolic, sitting down in the bottom 40 of my driveway. I just decided, it's like, I had just done a frame over on a D90, and I thought, I'm doing all this work, I should do this to my truck.
Do it for yourself.
And I had to frame.
And you had a tent garage already set
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had a pavilion or something, one of those
Yeah.
vinyl things. Okay.
Pushed it up under there and tore into it.
And so that's a complete build, as you said, from the frame, engine, transmission,
Yeah.
interior.
I had, at some point in time, I pushed the frame up because the frame was sitting there with the frame, the two axles, and the original transmission transfer. No drive shafts, no nothing, no shocks. And the engine was the engine out of Lisa's truck. And it sat in front of the garage for 5 years, the blue tarp over it, entirely.
Outside the garage, just in
Outside,
case you missed that.
And I took that engine, put in it, and then started, the transmission and transfer case had the 40 hung and glue on it. Started scraping that, cleaning that up, and cleaning things up, and just started building the truck. But the only thing I didn't do was the paint. I have a good friend in the gun club that's got a body shop, and I took it to him and said, just paint it. I put a couple patches in the bulkhead, and I said, I don't want anything fixed. I don't want anything covered. I want it sanded and painted. I had a hard time convincing him to do that.
Oh, no, I'm sure he wanted to make every spot weld disappear
Yes.
and every rivet disappear.
He would call me on the phone. Can I fix this? Yeah. I do. No, there's dents. Good. So he did the paint on the blue part of the body, and I did the wheels.
Is it a Rover stock color, or did you pick something
Oh,
special?
no, it's marine blue. That paint is such a close match that I did not paint dash panel and a couple other things. I put them in, and it just looks.
Is it completely stock, or did you do anything special or unique in typical Love fashion?
Well, for turn signals, I used a radio destruction switch from a B-24 bomber
Wow.
and a turn signal relay from a BMW K-bike. Because it's a latching relay, so you push a button, turn signal stay on, then you push another button, cancel.
They're not self-canceling.
No, they're not self-canceling.
They're manually canceling.
Exactly.
Well, they are self-canceling in the sense that he must himself cancel them.
Exactly.
He needs to initiate said cancel.
I did that. I used an MG torn and low beam switch on the old Series 2 bracket on the steering column. So there's no horn button in the middle of the steering wheel. Because I didn't want to run a wire up the steering column.
How do you sound the horn then?
Just push the button.
Oh, there's a button on the dash?
No,
Oh.
on a stalk on the side of the column.
Okay.
Like one would in
like
a
the
Series 3 or a Defender.
Series 1s, Series 2s.
Okay.
As did Series 3s and Defenders.
No, they have a switch. They have like a turn signal horn thing combined.
Right,
It's a
yeah.
combo, yeah.
This is just an old-fashioned dash model column.
But it's dedicated just for the horn.
Horn and high and low beam.
A horn high and low beam. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Then must have been 4 years ago now. I feel when you put all these sniper.
That's such a delightful contradiction to the rest of the technology on the truck.
I have points, manually canceling turn signals, and fuel injection.
I thought you put a gasoline in that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What kind of mileage are you getting?
Oh, I'll tell you what. Going to Greek Peak, I hit 20 miles a gallon.
Whoa. That's impressive. Were you loaded?
I have my toolbox.
That's cool.
I didn't take camping. That ship it. That ship it.
You stayed in the hotel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Luckily, Scooter and Michelle got a room. I slept on the couch.
Good call. Good call.
I was very lucky. He bailed my ass out of it.
But the hotel sold out pretty quick. Mhm.
Thankfully, he had a couch in his room. So it didn't end up having to spoon with Scooter.
Yes.
Right.
The ski lodge.
Yeah,
Yes.
that actually, I still own big time for. My cousin lives in Portland.
Oh.
Literally like 4 miles from the rally site. And I was going to stay with her. Then unexpectedly, her in-laws came into town because it happened to be graduation again for her son. So all of a sudden, I get a call like 2 days before. You're going to stay here?
He got pushed aside.
So I stopped to see her on the way to Greek Peak. And it's pouring down. Pouring.
I remember
So-
that.
I visit for, 3 or 4 hours. Catch up a little bit with her and her husband and her kids and stuff. And I get in the truck to leave, and it is just teeming down. I mean, it's just that straight down summer rain,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and the truck won't start.
Oh.
And they're all looking out the window at me. I'm waving goodbye, and the truck's going round, 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 round. So I thought, okay, we got to save face. She lives on a hill.
There you go.
Let the clutch out, second gear, and push the starter button. Got it out of her driveway and coasted down the hill. So I'm coasting down this hill, and it's pouring down, rain, truck hurt. I don't know. So I thought, hey, I'm coasting downhill. So I put it in third gear, let the clutch out, started right up. Drove to the rally.
Did you ever figure out what happened?
But if you're bump starting it, you're not consuming juice from the battery with the starter, so you're going to have more voltage available for the ignition of the fuel at that point.
Oh,
That
you
might have
can-
been the difference.
You can bump start a gas engine? You did.
you always did. Unless they're automatic.
Okay.
No, the
Thing
thing
the starting motor performs the same exact function mechanically on a diesel or a gasoline engine. All it does is provide rotation. So if you provide that rotation through some other means, you're good to go.
now, you have electronic stuff. But when it's fuel inject, still got to have a battery to get 12 volts. So if your battery dead, now, if you have the old generator, point ignition, it will bump start with it.
Not quickly, but yeah, a little bit of rotation starts to trickle some juice out of that generator.
So they never knew that you couldn't start your truck. And
Now, then I told them,
sure, you told them later, but yeah.
It was a hybrid. It left as an electric vehicle and then converted to a gasoline vehicle about a mile down the road.
exactly.
Mr. Love, this has been a wonderful conversation. These are stories that I've wanted to have told on the podcast for many years. We've told some of these stories ourselves, but hearing them right from you has been a pleasure.
Just a trip
hear.
down
Direct
memory
from-
lane.
dir- direct from the horse's ass mouth.
I got to leave you this one last story. We're at the Mar. I screwed up and had the wrong date figured out. So Lisa and Scooter's at the time girlfriend drove down in a Mercedes the day after because neither one of them had the vacation. I screwed up on it. So it was a nice day. For some stupid reason, I'm just standing there with my butt down on, leaning against the trunk of the Mercedes. And Earl Stone walks up to me and says, "Is there any chance you have 2 shock rubbers for a series?" And I reached down and pushed on my exhaust pipe. 2 series truck shock rubbers fell out in my hand. And I handed them to Earl. He just looked at me like, "How can this be?" Says, "I'm not going to ask." And that lady,
Is there anything about that we don't know that you need to tell us?
I just happened that the exhaust was rattling. And a week before, I just stuck series shock rubbers under the muffler to keep it from rattling.
And you happen to have at the right place,
Absolute-
the right thing that they needed at that time. There's a typical love luck.
Pure.
Right.
It wasn't my luck. It was that lovely lady that needed it.
Yeah, but that's still
Eh, eh.
love luck.
And this is precisely why whenever I need something weird, first place I call is Mark. By the way, any chance you have? And he's like, yeah, sure, it's right here.
Mark, thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me. It was lovely being here on location. The all expense paid trip made it worthwhile. And I think my neck will recover from sleeping in the backseat of my truck in no time.
Yes, guests of the CentreSteer podcast get to stay in their own vehicle.
In John's driveway.
In the driveway, yes.
You're not invited in.
Until we start recording.
7 minutes before blast off.
7 minutes. That's right. He showed up 7 minutes before, and then that's when he was allowed in the house. Seriously, Mark, thanks very much for coming down.
Thanks for
Appreciate it. It was good talking with you, man.
Always fun.
We hope you enjoyed show number 139. Thanks to our guest this month, Mark Love. You can find Mark on the LRO list, Guns N' Rovers, or in his driveway near Pittsburgh. He doesn't have much of a presence out there on the net. But if you're on
He doesn't need it.
No. If you're on the LRO list or Guns N' Rovers, you'll find Mark out there. Say hello. Also, thanks to our regular panelists, contributors. I still haven't figured out what to call you guys, but Dixon, Morgan, Harold, thanks, guys, for coming on, as always, every month. I do appreciate it.
I like to use resident smartass.
Nice. And also to the One True Packs for his continued production support. Do appreciate it. I did have someone at the GAR mention about how they've been listening for quite a while, and they did appreciate the audio quality and noticed it had gotten better over the years, and part of that is thanks to PAX. We post a new podcast at the end of every month. Our website, CentreSteer.com, in the British spelling, has all our shows to listen to and with show notes with links to stories discussed in today's podcast. You can directly support the podcast at patreon.com/CentreSteer, where you get bonus content. You can also buy a t-shirt, sticker, or even buy us a tea. Visit our website for details. If you have an idea for guests, we're always open to it. Send us those details and contact information if you have it. Thank you for listening. And a special shout out to those spouses, friends, children who have to listen to the podcast because the driver is traveling several hours and they're such a Land Rover fanatic that they're listening to the podcast while traveling, and you have to listen to the podcast. So we appreciate you allowing your partner or father or mother or whoever it happens to be listening to the podcast. We do appreciate you also.
Sucks to be you.
And we'd love to hear from you and what you're up to in your Land Rover.
On behalf of our entire North American crew here at the CentreSteer podcast, I'd like to thank you all for listening today. We know you have a choice when it comes to your podcast content, and we do appreciate your choosing us. Please take a moment to look around you for any personal items you may be leaving behind, especially in the overhead bins. Remember that some items may have shifted during the show. Please watch your step as you make your way past the 20-year-old pile of parts that's waiting for you to build a truck. And you may now resume your important things.
The Land Rover Defender Industrial Complex now has a firm grip on America.